Greg Sinclair, welcome to Inside Acquisitions. Hey, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. How's the start of the financial year been for you?
It's actually been pretty good. I think June, July typically is very quiet for us because most vendors are waiting to see what their accountants say and get their
Statements
numbers
day up.
done
Yep.
before they decide whether they're going to sell or not. But
Mm.
we had a number of inquiries in June.
Yep.
Nothing much in July, but a number of inquiries in June. So that started out quite positively. So I'm quite optimistic for this next year ahead.
That's good. I want to touch on that a little bit later in the chat, but I'm curious to know, I've just been looking into your background and where you first started. So were you straight out of school, accountant, moved straight into KPMG or?
Yeah, from university. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no
right. So
kidding.
straight to KPMG.
Yep.
Did the chartered accounting thing. Finished. I was in audit. Did 3 years there, and then decided that I was a chartered accountant. God's greatest gift to accountants, but I couldn't do a tax return.
Yeah, right.
I went to small business accounting. So I went to a small firm,
Yeah.
and then did that for a year or so, and then I was looking for something different. So
Yeah. Were you based in Victoria at that time, or were you in different capital cities or?
no, I was up in Sydney actually. So I grew up
Yeah,
in
right.
Queensland, went to Sydney for university, and then stayed there, and then
Kept moving south.
well, no, stayed up there for. I actually moved down to Melbourne to finish my qualification, and then moved back to Sydney,
Yeah.
and then when I left accounting, I started my career up there. So
Yeah, okay. And is it difficult to become chartered? Is it just a process of like experience over a number of years, and then is it a test or what happens?
basically it's a postgraduate qualification effectively, which you do whilst you're working. So
Mm.
you need to have 3 years experience in a relevant chartered accounting firm, and then you also need to do what's called a professional year, which is effectively as I said, postgrad qualification, which you study, which you do whilst working.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's difficult, but it's no more difficult than other postgrad qualifications that other professions have.
Yeah, yeah. And then from there, where did you move from there? Because I think just reading your profile, you then moved into recruitment. Is that right with Michael Page?
That's right, yeah. So I was keen to. I wanted to get in front of the business rather than the back of the business. So, and I was trying to work out how to do that, either via accounting and then jumping into some kind of general manager role or something like that. That didn't quite work. And then I was doing the rounds of recruitment companies, and one of the recruitment companies said, "What about this?" And then I thought about it, and basically took the leap. I mean, my initial thought was it was a sales role. I didn't want to do sales. I was not, I equated as an accountant, typical accountant. I equated all sales as used car salespeople.
Yeah, yeah.
So, wasn't interested in that. But then I decided, I could see how it would work. And recruitment is really like running your own little business. Now you're selling. You have to get yourself out there, but then you're also providing the service. So it's not just, turning up and then giving them a pen or selling them a pen or something like that. You're selling them a service, and you have to provide that service. So, and that's typically what happens in recruitment. You have people who have got, who are very, very strong on the sales side, not so good on the service side, or
Yeah.
very good on the service side, not so good on the sales side. Obviously the best ones are the ones that can do both. So that's what I did. Joined Michael Page, which is a very big
Recruitment.
international recruitment firm. But I was lucky enough to join them when they were only 10 people in Australia, all of whom in Sydney.
Oh, wow.
And I'd say now they've got offices in five states. I've probably got 300 staff or something. So I was very lucky to be at the beginning of that growth.
So did you just jump straight into recruitment with them, or were you more into a management role? And what side of
No,
the
straight to
so,
recruitment. So you go
yeah, right.
straight in, and then you learn how to recruit. Basically by interviewing people, and then you start marketing to basically
Businesses.
initially I started off in accounting recruitment, so I was recruiting accountants for accountants,
Yeah.
and you get better at it by doing it. I mean, the whole I suppose philosophy of Michael Page was specialisation, and it's something I believe in, and it happens in lots of other different fields as well. But basically, the more you do something, the better you are at it, and you don't have to do it for very long before you're an expert at it or a specialist at it. So, and that's what we did in recruitment. You start interviewing accountants, and once you've interviewed 30 or 40 of them, you tend to learn a lot about what they do, and also learn about who does it, who they do it for.
Mm.
So then that enables you to understand that market effectively, or those
Yeah.
people.
Was it difficult getting accounting firms to come on board as clients?
Well, got to remember we're looking at recruiting for accounting firms, but also the bigger market is
Big
actually
businesses.
recruiting
Yep.
accountants for, commerce and industry,
Mm.
banking services.
Yeah,
Eventually,
yeah.
you move in. You recruit accountants into, banks for banking roles, not accounting roles. So there's all sorts of places that accountants go. So those are the types of organisations we targeted and we talked to, and effectively initially when we back in the day when I started, it was a concept sell. So we were actually selling the concept of using a recruitment consultant, because back then it wasn't as common as it is now. So where initially it's saying, this is going to be a better use of your time, Mr. Financial Controller, to engage us to do this rather than you do it, because we can write the ads better, B, we can access the advertising mediums better, and C, we also have a database of people because we do this all the time, and we've got people, we can access that database to top up the advertising response. Plus, it's, your time is valuable. You're better off doing accounting work or business work.
Well,
Just we'll produce the people.
that's the key, isn't it? Being able to see that value. And I think, from the bigger end of town anyway, that can easier for them to put a value on it and say, well, yeah, my time is going to be worth X to go through this recruitment process. I'm better off paying an expert in that niche, X amount of dollars, whatever it is, to place a candidate, rather than, I imagine there'd be a bit more pushback at the smaller end of town, for example.
Yeah, both ends. I mean, it's all about convincing people that it works, and it also is about doing it well. You might convince people, or typically the barriers you come up against is one, cost. They just don't have the money, or they feel that they don't have the money. Two, they might have other people like an internal HR person who's saying that they can do it as well as an external recruiter. But three, the biggest probably hurdle is the fact that they might have used a recruiter before and it didn't work. They end up spending money and didn't get the person, and didn't like the service.
Yeah.
But that's always the biggest challenge. Which is also how you build your business, because if you do it and you do it well, then your clients will come back to you. So and over the years, I was in 30 years in recruitment, and I made good friends with some of my clients because I'd recruit for them for over 10 years. Maybe one every 2 years, something like that. But then I'd get a call and they'd say we need somebody else. So that's a great relationship.
And that's the key, isn't it? If I just think back to my own experience with not all of my hires, but one of my hires in a previous business where I took this guy on board and he had no experience in the finance world. And I thought, God, he's got a great attitude. He's keen to learn. I can teach him. I've been doing this for a little while, and it just didn't work out. And if I was to put a dollar figure on that, I mean, we pushed on for about 6 months and it just did not work, but sales fell off a cliff. If you were to put a figure onto that and go, what did that hire actually cost me? It would be 15, 20, maybe more.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, you're like, well, it's not just the upfront costs, it's the immediate costs as well of putting a wrong person into your business. Like all the time, the energy, potential loss of sales, everything you need to invest in getting someone up to speed as well. It adds up very quick.
That's right. And that's the argument we'd put to clients to use a recruiter. I mean, obviously though, you can do all the right things and recruit the right person, or what seems to be the right person, and they can fall over. They can be the wrong person because sometimes they just don't show up that well. So that happens, but certainly using a good recruiter can avoid a lot of those issues. If you do it properly.
Yeah. So what happened after Michael Page? Did you go out on your own?
So I was with Michael Page for 15 years. I really enjoyed that. Great company. But I outgrew it. It was very much a young person's environment. And so I decided to go out. First off, I left there and then was looking at what I wanted to do. I was looking, had two options, basically to follow my technical skill in terms of recruitment, or to follow the management line, basically, because I was in a senior management role there. And so, senior management, so maybe I can do management somewhere else. And really couldn't make that break into other management roles, and recruitment was calling. I did try to test the waters in another company in a senior management role in a big recruitment company, but that didn't fit either. So I decided, I want to do my own thing, and I'd always wanted to run my own business anyway. So back in Michael Page, I moved from Sydney to Melbourne specifically because I wanted to get into management, and then ultimately ended up running that business. And recruitment, like I said before, you're effectively running your own business right from the start, and then when you get into management, you're running a business with people as well who you're managing. So I always wanted that control of running my own business. So I ended up buying a recruitment business.
Interesting. Okay. And how did that come about? Was that on the market? Did you hear of it on the grapevine? Was it something you were looking for? What was the process there?
I'm not sure. I did hear about it through somebody I met. I'm not sure how. I can't remember now, but I think it was a former finance client of mine who I'd run into, and he ended up being in recruitment, and he was a part shareholder in this business. And so I ended up, getting introduced and deciding that was the way I wanted to go. And it was good. It worked out well. I was a little bit naive in buying it, probably paid too much, but it was successful. I mean, it worked because I was the right buyer for it. It got me into logistics recruitment. So I was basically doing professional recruitment, so primarily accounting, sales and marketing, and then in the last few years at Michael Page, more management, so less recruiting. So this business that I bought was very heavily into the logistics space, so doing a lot of work for Linfox and Australia Post and people like that. And so I ended up learning a lot about logistics recruitment. So I did that for about 5, 6, 7 years, but I was just getting I couldn't grow it. I was trying to grow it, and I just wasn't able to grow it without investing a lot, and I wasn't willing to invest a lot. And I also still had a hankering for senior management. Could I make it in another big company? So I ended up selling that business to a company called Chandler McLeod. Which was in a growth phase at the moment, and they were looking to add specialist recruitment businesses.
So just talk me through that. How did that come about? Did you approach them? Did you hear that they were looking to buy, then reached out to one of your contacts there? And what was that process? What was that like?
That was all personal connections, that one. Mm-hmm. The newly appointed CEO of recruitment was somebody that I'd worked with before. He came to me and said, come and work for us. And I said, well, I'm running my business. I mean, what about, I can't go. I'm going to have to sell it first. What about you buy it? How would that work? And so that's where that conversation started. And ultimately we did a deal for that to happen.
Okay. And are you able to share any of not the dollar terms of that deal, but was it a deal where they said, well, we'll buy the company upfront and then pay you out over a period of time because we want you in this business? Or was it more just, okay, here's some money for your business and you're now an employee of this company for however long?
Yeah, no, it was an earn-out scenario. So it was an agreed figure based on a multiple of earnings over the next 2 years working in the business. So basically I took my staff and myself into the business. We had our own P&L, which was separated from the rest of the business. I mean, obviously they had us incorporated, but we had one separate, which we were judged on.
Yep.
And we effectively ran that business for 2 years as if it was our own business within the bigger business.
Yep.
And that was all very good, apart from the GFC came along. So that happened in the very first year of the 2-year earnout, and recruitment fell off a cliff, and we ended up losing money in the first year. So that was quite disastrous. And then, but then the market picked up and we turned it around, made a good profit in the second year, all good. So, expected to get a good payout at that point, and then found that the company disputed how the earnout was calculated. And so I ended up having to take them to court. I had a 12-month process and eventually won that. Which was a fairly stressful situation.
Can imagine, plus costly.
I mean, during the 2 years, the company changed its mind about where it was going, and this ultimately, proved to me that I'm the wrong person to be in a big company, because you just can't trust the people above you, because either they change or they change their mind. And so very soon within the 2 years, we were a business in that company that they didn't want that business. They had changed their whole philosophy. They didn't actually want that type of recruitment, and they wanted systems-based recruitment, and temporary recruitment services rather than permanent. I was stuck there for 2 years running the business in an environment that I was not happy with and not comfortable with. But obviously needed to get the earnout and to get out. As soon as we finished the 2 years, that finished, and then it took the next 12 months to get the money out of them through the courts, and they were appalling. They were, these types of cases, which was effectively a contract dispute. They basically never get to court because they're commercially, settled along the way, because neither party, I mean, certainly the big company typically doesn't want to go to court, and the smaller party maybe doesn't have the money or won't continue with it. But this time they were obstinate, poorly advised, and they maintained it all of the way. They went all the way through to court, and then they got smacked completely. And we beat them, on multiple fronts. They got ordered to pay what I had believed they were supposed to pay in the first place, plus costs, and ultimately, it worked out okay for me. But
that's
it
good.
was a very poor experience.
What a learning experience, though. I mean, everyone that I've spoken to, and myself included, when I sold my franchise, part of it was cash flow was done it wasn't done as an earn out, but it was done as vendor terms. So it was effectively, I'll leave a certain amount of cash in the business, and then within 3 months, that cash gets paid back once money starts flowing through to the new owner. And that was all good. It was documented, legal, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, you can guess where this was going. The 90 days ticks over, no payment. Emails are going unanswered, phone calls are going unanswered. It's a couple of weeks later where it's like, well, we're going to have to take this further if things just get ignored. And I guess the moral of the story is, even though when you first think about earnouts or vendor terms, you think, well, it can really work for both parties, but I haven't heard too many that have actually gone well. Am I wrong in that regard? Or you've obviously got more experience in that space, but have you seen some that have worked out really well?
Yeah, I have. I have seen them. I've seen them work. Not necessarily really well, but they've worked the way they're supposed to work. Two come to mind straight away. One was a debt collection business, services business, which had a 6-month earnout period, and the vendor was paid out. He exceeded the expectations. He got paid out, and everybody was happy. Another one which was a distribution business. I think it had a 12-month. Wasn't an earnout period, but it was almost a vendor finance situation, and that business went really well, and they got paid out as well. So a very happy environment. So no, it can happen. Yeah. The thing about the business is, I think, and what I say to my clients is, when they are considering accepting vendor terms, number one, you want to have as little amount at risk as possible. But number two, you've also got to look at number two, then you also want to be able to control that risk somewhat in the period that it's outstanding. So, you want to stay involved with the business somehow.
What about security? What do you normally see security? So if someone says, okay, 50% cash, 50% vendor terms over 12 months, or let's just say vendor finance, keep it simple, would it be secured by shares in the company?
Typically, often it will be, or it might be secured over taking the company back. So, so I've sold my company to you, XYZ Proprietary Limited, which manufactures widgets. And, so the first line of security is I can take that company back.
Yeah, if you default on the payments.
Of course, you don't want to take the company back because you've sold the business. That's what you want to get out of.
Yeah.
But it's that's where I'm saying what you want. The third thing that you want is you want to have the buyer motivated to get you out, and motivated 100%. To not make you unhappy.
Yeah.
So because again, if you're unhappy, if you're in the business, but you can influence customers, you can influence staff. So ideally, you want that situation. You want the people to be they don't want to upset you, so that you don't negatively influence the business.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is that most people, when it's vendor finance, let's say it's a $1 million sale, and let's say they put up $500,000, and they're going to put up $500,000 the second time round. From the vendor's point of view, I'm risking $500,000. And they say, well, this guy could come in there and stuff it all up and then just walk away, or they just don't pay me the next $500,000. The thing is, they're putting $500,000 up as well,
exactly.
So they're putting that at risk, and they're not going to just blow it by just stuffing it up easily. They're going to really work hard to try and make it work. So there's a lot of things to consider before you do it.
Yeah, great. And I think, case in point, there's certainly some businesses out there where I think that works well, especially. I mean, in my view anyway, if you want to command a slightly higher price, it could be, well, for cash, it's, cash up front on closing. There's a higher risk to the buyer, obviously, because, you also want the seller to stick around for an agreed handover time. But if you pay cash up front and it's done, there's nothing to say that they will stick around.
That's
and
right.
obviously you have non-competes and all that sort of stuff. So like you said in your example, if you're $1 million, $500,000 in each, that's a significant amount of money for both the buyer and the seller. But it's something where you can say, well, I'm committed to it. Obviously, I've got $500,000 into this deal. You're committed to it. So let's both work together for the next 12 months and make this thing a roaring success. So we both get off on the right foot. Yeah, I think
that's right.
As long as you have
you do have to prepare for the fact that it might not be a success.
Correct.
So, GFC might come along. What happens then? These types of things can happen outside of both parties' control. So that's where you need to have the contract right, and that's typically where the problems occur. So, where the contract is interpreted differently by both parties. So that can be a problem. And in my situation, when I sold my business, I had legal advice, and a lawyer looked at the contract. They never saw the issue. They never saw the clause that could easily, or that the other side could misinterpret. So just having all the advice up front doesn't necessarily solve it all the time. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, the contract is only as good as the person who's actually going to spend the money and the time to enforce it.
Yeah,
really,
that's right.
Which makes it tricky. So from there, jumping to what you're doing now with Fin Business Brokers.
Well, the first thing I did was buy another recruitment business.
Oh, did you really?
This time I bought into it slowly. So rather than paying up front and taking it over, this time I paid a small amount up front because I was taking over a much smaller business, one person, basically taking over a client base. I paid him a little bit of money up front and then a percentage of the revenue that I derived out of his clients for a period of time. So, and that worked. And then I still have that now, which is a business called Hunter Mollard. So I've been doing recruitment. So effectively, I still do recruitment now, but really for the last 8 years, my primary business has been the business broking. So, and along the way, so what happened was I had that business and probably 5 years or so, but decided that I wasn't ready to develop that business any further, didn't want to do any marketing, and I just decided I wasn't comfortable working with the clients that I had, just wasn't right for me. So I was looking for another business where I could use my analytical skills, and then came across business broking. So, and again, it worked out well. I bought into a franchise, so relatively small capital cost, and effectively that enables some basic training and then effectively enabled me to run my own business, but with the backing or the nominal backing of a much larger organisation. So
yeah, it's so important, especially in the early days, isn't it? With generating that inquiry and getting things off the ground, having a brand behind you that people know. I certainly found that with my experience when I joined Aussie. The one good thing about Aussie, I would say, and I guess this is 25 years in the making, but when I opened my store, I didn't have to explain to anyone that walked through the doors what we do.
Yeah, that's right. It gives you credibility.
Yeah.
So credibility, you can use all of the marketing terms like, number of people across the country. In our case, 60 plus brokers, 200 business listings at any one time, database of 10,000 buyers, all of that type of stuff. So it just gives you marketing credibility to get the clients, and then you have to fulfill it.
Yeah. So I'm interested to know, with your experience with Fin, how long have you been with those guys now?
About 8 years, I think 2017.
8 years, wow. So you probably sold quite a number of businesses. I've just had a quick look on your website. And one thing I'm curious to know from you, and yeah, I guess this comes back to a lot of conversations that I have with people that are looking to finance a business acquisition. And yeah, I tend to seem to be speaking to people over and over again, some for years, that just continually are searching for that right business. And it's not that their finance isn't in order, or they don't have equity, or they don't have experience, but some people just seem to get stuck on almost like a treadmill of, trying to find that right business and can never actually get there. What do you think that is? And if you were just thinking about some of the ones that you sold, what's the difference between those buyers and some of the people that get stuck in that sort of doom loop for years?
I think the latter that you're talking about, they're basically people who really don't have the risk appetite to buy a business. They want to buy a business, but they balk at the risk every single time. That's what the nature of it is. Running a business is much riskier than having a job.
Yeah.
Although, obviously, you can lose a job very easily as well, but you just don't have that systemization or the system behind you within a job environment, and where you've got the checks and balances and you know what you're doing and you're getting the regular income flow.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. The biggest, we see it all the time with buyers. Buyers will come in and say, I'm looking for a business. And, the difference between buyers that buy businesses and the buyers that don't buy businesses is that buyers that buy businesses, they know what they're looking for. So they narrow down their search. So, typically I'll ask a buyer what they're looking for, and they'll say, well, I'm industry agnostic. I don't really care. I don't want to hospitality and retail, but anything else is fine.
It's like, yeah, well, you're not going to buy anything then.
Well, that's thousands of businesses. So they need to have an idea about what it is that they're interested in, what it is that they're suited to, and then what's your budget? What size of the business are you going to look for? So there's a number of questions that people should ask themselves to prepare and then to hone in on the businesses. They don't need to go in looking for a business that manufactures stuffed donkeys.
Yeah.
You bring it out and say that they're looking for a business that perhaps in the education or the children's toys space. Could be manufacturing, could be distribution, because you believe in children's toys or something. So, but it needs to be focused. It needs to be much more focused than open. And otherwise you can constantly be looking at different businesses. You'll waste a lot of time, and you'll waste brokers' times. Yep. And that's and that will cause a lot of frustration all around.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. If I think back to the last couple of deals that we did, one was it was a building industry business. He actually worked within the business and ended up buying the owner out. So that was a bit simpler in that regard. And then the previous one was an education business, an education franchise. This person that bought it had no affiliation with the franchise, but she was a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
So her kids had gone through that. So
yeah, they've got a connection to the business of some sort. So and that's where franchises do work, because it enables people who don't have a background in certain businesses to buy a business and learn from it along the way. It's some training 100%. Along the way, and so they get eased into it. Yeah. But they typically cost a lot more, because there's that support in terms of driving your revenue and your market, your training support. So,
100%. Plus the systems they've developed over time, there's a lot to be said for that. It's like, well, these systems work. We've developed it through the franchise system over the last however many years. You don't need to try and reinvent the wheel, even though you've got freedom to do your marketing, sales, whatever it is that you want to do. That was one of the big things that I found. It was just like, well, I don't need to think about the systems in the business. I can already see the ones that work. I've just got to think about how to grow it.
That's right. So that's the benefit of those types of businesses. But buyers just need to understand what it is, need to define better what they want, and then they're going to be more successful in finding it.
Yeah, right. So where do you think the business for sale market is going in the next 12 to 24 months? Do you think AI will have much of an impact? Do you think we're going to see the flood of boomers that are apparently been coming for the last 3-4 years, all wanting to sell their businesses? There's a lot of talk online about, maybe it's just me, but I seem to be getting these pages popping up all the time talking about buying businesses with no money down. And there's certainly plenty of people that seem to be wanting buying businesses, but do you see much changing, or do you think it's just going to stay relatively the same?
Certainly not in the next 12 to 24 months. I think there probably will be an increase in vendors looking to sell, because I think the last 12 months has been tough for businesses. And so I know a number of businesses have been holding up just to improve their sales and profits before they sell. So they delay the sale of the business. So that will happen. So I think there'll be an increase of that. I think there'll be, I think lower interest rates is going to help both business performance and also the appetite for people to buy businesses. Obviously the economy is reasonably strong, but has a lot of uncertainty with the American situation. So that's going to create uncertainty. So that's going to impact some businesses, but some businesses positively and some businesses negatively. So it's always double-edged sword, those types of things. So I don't see technology changing that much. I mean, I suppose the businesses that I haven't work too much with technology-driven businesses. So, and I don't see that I will in the future. I think there's so many businesses out there that are making good money, making a good living for people that are completely unknown, unsexy, manufacturing, components of something,
some niche product.
That's right. Very niche businesses. I've sold a debt collection business, which basically collects small business debts up to $15,000. That business is worth $2 million. I've sold a business that was manufacturing components for cardboard packaging manufacturing business industry. And these businesses, they're earning $500,000 a year, the owners. So these are sound businesses and that are earning good money. And that's why people want to buy into businesses, because they can earn more money that way than in a salaried job. And also they have the benefit of being in a small business, that you can write off some more expenses rather than, and so you've got more tax effective opportunities of managing your income. So I think there'll still be demand. There's certainly a lot of family investment companies out there looking to buy businesses, small to medium-sized businesses, because they can see that they have very good returns, much better returns than property or the stock market, but they have greater risks. So they need to be able to manage them. They need to oversee them, that type of thing. But there's plenty of organisations that want to work in that space. The big change that's probably going to happen is, that has happened in the last 12 months, is that there's been very little appetite for businesses making, under $150,000 a year. And that's because we've got high employment or very low unemployment. So it's much easier to have a job. You can go out, and most people can go out and get a job for
same income level. Yep.
That's right. And earn that same amount of money without any upfront costs and without that risk. That might change. Employment's been low for a long, long time, and that might change, and there might be a bit more opportunity to go into business. We shall see. But fundamentally, I think the next 12 to 24 months will be good for selling businesses.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one thing I would love to see that I think America, and perhaps even the UK, certainly America, they have the SBA system, the SBA loan system, which is government backed.
Right.
So, and that applies to business sales as well. So as in general terms anyway, the SBA is backing loans of up to 80%, sometimes 90% on a business sale purchase. And that sort of stuff just does not exist in the Australian market, which I think would be extremely helpful in these cases if there was some sort of system like that in Australia, because there's no way to sugarcoat it. Like, financing the acquisition of a business is not on every bank's menu. That's for sure. There's limited players in that space, and that obviously affects as well the end value. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So, that's a big part of what I do as a broker is assess when I'm talking to buyers, I'm looking at assessing both their capability and their capacity. So capability is, have they got the background to run this business effectively? But their capacity, have they got the money? And have they got the access to the money? So, and clearly I'm much more interested in people who have got cash, if not cash, their own assets. Oftentimes there are buyers that who think that they can just buy a business and borrow against that business that they're buying. Yes, you can borrow against some businesses, but you'll never borrow the full amount.
Correct. And should you?
They just don't have that. They're not aware of that.
Yeah, I agree. I sometimes speak to people as well, and they're like, well, I'll borrow everything plus more because my accountant said so. And look, it makes sense from a tax perspective. I get that. But it's like, well, you don't want to cripple the business either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You want to load this thing with debt and keep your cash aside. Yes, cash is king. We all get that. But again, you want to give it the best chance of survival in your early years while you're learning the reins of something new.
Yep, that's right.
Loading with debt is not the way to go. Greg, that was a great chat. Where can people reach out to you? Where can they find you if they want to chat to you about selling their business? Does it just go to your website or socials?
Yeah, sure. Just look me up. Look up Greg Sinclair on Google and you'll probably get to my website, which is fbsbusinessbrokers.com.au. So I'm part of the Fin Business Sales Network, but we have our own website as well as the Fin Group. And they can just find me there, or if I'm happy to anybody give me a call, 0417 354 179.
Lovely. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate the chat.
Thanks, Mark. Not a problem. All the best.